So are we live already?
Yep, be alive.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening to all our colleagues, early career researchers, doctoral candidates, and professionals around Europe. Welcome to the Eurodoc webinar series. This webinar is dedicated to the academic values, and today we will talk about approaches to academic values and their understanding in Hungary, Poland, Slovenia, and Ukraine. So it's more Central and Eastern European perspectives, but with the eyes of early career researchers and Eurodoc members, national associations which unite doctoral candidates and early career researchers, postdocs across those countries. Our webinar is being recorded and is being streamed online on YouTube. So we will discuss today a lot of different issues. We did not specifically mention what kind of academic values we are going to discuss today to allow our colleagues to elaborate more and to show diversity in the perspectives of treating academic values, including ethics and integrity, academic freedom, accountability, responsibility, societal engagement across academia and specifically in doctoral training. So welcome everybody. We are happy to have you here. I hope you will spend this evening together with Eurodoc and discussing academic values. So for welcoming words, I would like to invite the president of the Eurodoc, Alexander Beresko, who is Ukrainian and joining us from Lviv. I hope the electricity will run for that period of time. So Alexander, please say our welcoming words to the participants.
Dear all, hello. My name is Alexander Beresko, as Irina mentioned, and I'm very happy to be able to say some words to you today. As you probably noticed, Eurodoc has been quite active in organizing various events recently, especially webinars. And this is another great webinar. I hope it will be great, of course, regarding academic values. So let me tell you that, research culture in general encompasses behaviors, values, expectations, attitudes, and norms of our research communities. It influences researchers' career paths and determines the way that research is conducted and communicated. In Eurodoc, our vision is a fair and sustainable research culture where early career researchers are treated with respect and have access to long-term and stable career pathways. And this can only this research culture can only be built on strong values, and especially such as academic freedom, research integrity, and many others. And we understand this quite well. So I believe that today we will have an amazing discussion with amazing speakers from all over Europe, especially focusing on Central and Eastern Europe. I wish you the best of luck and wish you to have a very fruitful and nice discussion. Irina, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexander. As Alexander recalled, the Eurodoc vision and the Eurodoc mission is actually to advocate for positive changes in academic community in general, but specifically for policies, culture, and environments for doctoral training. And we do believe that academic values, research integrity, academic freedom, and responsibility are and should be at the core of each doctoral program. So today we will be sharing also some questions for the discussions, and you will find the link to the questions about how to ensure all these things and academic values, and what actually do we mean by academic values, how this word is being understood in your academic community. So we will be sharing the link to the questions, and we will discuss this with the audience a little bit later. But now let me also refer to some general issues related to academic values. If we are talking about universities in Europe, for sure, working and publications, reports delivered by the European University Association and the Council for Doctoral Education are the fundamental here, as well as the European documents like the European Strategy for Universities or European Education Area or New Communication for European Research Area. And if you read all these documents, you can see that values in their diversity, they are at the core of all the policies today in the European Union. What is considered by the fundamental values? Of course, we will refer to this across the country's experiences, but I would like to recall what is being understood as fundamental values in Europe, in the European Union, and being mentioned in all these important documents. That's first of all, of course, institutional autonomy. And if we are talking about institutional autonomy, we can remember about their diversity in terms of the academic autonomy, organizational autonomy, financial autonomy, and staff autonomy. And all these countries we are going to discuss today and which experience we are going to learn today, they are more or less on the same level in terms of all these types of autonomy. Of course, the fundamental value is academic freedom, and advocating for academic freedom is one of the biggest tasks and challenges today. And our guest speaker will also refer to that more. Of course, inclusiveness and engagement, societal engagement and inclusiveness in terms also of the refugees. At this moment, integrating refugees also from Ukraine across academia is also one of the values which is much more important today than it was even a couple of years before. Talking about academic values, of course, a big, huge area of universities' responsibility here is in the area of sustainable development, green economy, etc. All these policies for the development of the world, it is being done and should be done together with the universities based on the research which is done according to the ethical values and ethical principles. That's why research integrity and ethics today at the core of all the activities and all the programs related to the public funding and also to the private funding. Of course, we can talk much about academic values. We can differentiate them across the countries, but we should always remember about the landscape, about the environment, and about the challenges which are set up by the external world, by the policies, by numerous challenges related to the academia and non-academic sector, to the academic profession. And about all these values, today we have the special guest to speak about. This is Tom Lindemann. This is our colleague from numerous projects related to research integrity. Today he represents the project ROSiE, in which Eurodoc is also being involved. Tom is a research manager and research analyst at EUREC office. EUREC, for those who doesn't know, this is the European network of research ethics committees, uniting national ethical offices across Europe, umbrella organization, bringing all main ethics committees together, like Eurodoc brings all national associations of doctoral candidates together. At EUREC, Tom is involved in many EU-funded projects related to research ethics and integrity. One of them, as I mentioned, this is ROSiE. Recently, he was also involved in the project Virtue. This is a brilliant trainer program in research integrity and path to integrity, in which Eurodoc was also involved. So I hope Tom will be able to share with us his own perspective for the landscape, for the academic values, and for the challenges and dilemmas in the current world with which we have to deal with. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irina, for the introduction, and thanks to the whole Eurodoc team for the invitation to this interesting event. I will try to provide one overarching perspective on academic values. As Irina said, this is a very broad field, so it's presumably impossible to give the perspective, but I hope that what I will share in a minute will be useful to essentially kickstart the discussion and pave the way towards more country-focused presentations. I will share my screen, hoping that this works. Yeah, I hope that you can see that. Okay, more specifically, I will, during the next roughly 10 minutes, talk briefly about what are values, what are norms, how are they related to conduct, and delve into the topic of academic values in changing research environments, what challenges this poses, what implications this has. Well, as Irina said in her introductory remarks, academic values, very broad field. One purpose of the event today, discussing how academic values are understood in different countries, in different settings. There is no set in stone definition of what academic values are. There is rather a very, very long list. One perspective to look at academic values is saying, well, important academic values, not the only ones, but certainly important ones, are those related to research ethics, that is protection of human subjects in research, protections of animals, protection of persons who cannot give consent, persons who are minors, things like that. There is the research integrity perspective that focuses on all aspects related to good scientific practices and questionable research practices. So values emphasizing the highest quality of research, values emphasizing the importance of protecting whistleblowers, values related to good peer review, very broad basket again, as well as several overlapping issues that could be related to both research ethics or research integrity, data management, data protection, open science, and all these kinds of things. I will focus on some aspects related to research ethics and research integrity in the next couple of minutes, as well as on a more overarching thing, which is often referred to as the ethos of science. But first, some words on what are values actually? How do they relate to norms? How do they relate to conduct, to perhaps provide some way of thinking about some key terms? In a nutshell, I apologize to philosophers or ethicists listening to this one who will say, well, this might be a bit superficial, but in a nutshell, and to think about this from a practical point of view, values specify important ideals or beliefs of a person or a community. As such, they motivate action by telling us what is good or what is bad, what is desirable, what is not desirable, what is valuable, what is less valuable. Norms, by contrast, are action guiding rules. They specify desirable or undesirable conduct. So while values typically tell us what is good or what is bad, norms tell us what is right or what is wrong. As such, values are related to norms and norms to values. values can be operationalized as norms. Otherwise, they lack action guidance. Otherwise, they are desirable things that, however, remain a bit unspecific, while norms are underpinned by values. A norm that is not underpinned by a value is, at least from a normative point of view, of questionable authority. More information on this, I'm giving the reference on the slide, can be found on the Embassy of Good Science in what is hopefully an easy way to understand what could otherwise be complicated concepts. One perspective, one of the most famous perspectives on academic values is to look at the ethos of science, Merton's norms, which specify communal values guiding the scientific community. I think that's an important point first. When we talk about academic values, we don't typically talk about the values of a single person. We talk about shared values, shared by a community, and as such, they give guidance, or the norms related to these values give guidance to all actors who are part of this community. Crucial term already mentioned in the introductory remarks by both speakers is academic freedom, which is in itself a very general and very important value. What does academic freedom mean? There is relatively little government interference, relatively little legal guidance on how research should be conducted compared to many other societal subsystems. And this is typically considered desirable and good. Why is this so, or how can this work? This presupposes that the community, the scientific community, is guided by a shared set of values, by a shared set of norms. Otherwise, things would presumably be less structured. So academic freedom presupposes that a community follows certain norms so that actors know what to do, what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. And adherence to these values is a crucial source of public trust in science, and for a positive and strong science-society connection. So when lay people look at the scientific subsystem, they do have or should rightfully have the expectation that actors within this system are governed by values that are focused on finding the truth, perhaps not attainable, but at least as an aspirational goal, or validity in scientific discipline that are not as such truth focused, such as humanities and some aspects of social sciences. So what does Merton say are key aspirational norms of science? These would be communalism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism in his famous formulation. Communalism denotes that scientific results are not owned, or if they're owned by the scientific community, not by a specific person. Credit is given via citations, for example, recognition, but not ownership to those who have discovered something. Universalism denotes that findings are evaluated solely on methodological grounds, solely on based on scientific criteria, and unrelated to the background of the person, be it the ethnic background, gender, whatever. These should be totally independent from whether something is accepted as being scientifically valid or not. Disinterestedness, researchers should not pursue a material agenda when pursuing research, or when should not be motivated to arrive at certain conclusions because they serve their material self-interest. So the reward system should be independent from results. And organized skepticism, all results should always be scrutinized, both by the researcher individually as well as by the research community. Nothing is accepted as face value just because someone who is commonly regarded as an authority has said it. So these are aspirational values. To what extent they are empirically really guiding research is a very open question, and I guess we will hear several important perspectives on that in the upcoming minutes, because actually realizing this has always been difficult, and in particular settings that might be even more difficult than in others. Just a few words. I don't want to talk too much about these stuff and give room to the country-specific perspectives. I started saying that academic values, very broad field, there are various different ways to look at this. Other values that come to mind when specifying what is good would, for example, be those that are embodied in the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity that emphasizes reliability, honesty, respect, and accountability. Or in research ethics, the well-known principles of biomedical ethics developed by Beecham and Childress, such as autonomy, non-maleficence, beneficence, and justice. I won't address these in much more depth now, just wanted to show that there are multiple perspectives on academic values. There is no one perspective that encompasses everything. A few words on academic values in changing research environments. Because research environments change, we have research on and with new and emerging technologies. We have an increased globalization of research. We have research occurring in very challenging settings. And this gives rise to challenges related to acting based upon values. So challenges can be related to multicentric research that spans across different cultures, where societies as well as the researchers involved might not necessarily share values. So values can conflict, as can norms. Academia, industry, or business collaborations can be challenging because, for example, the Mertonian norms are norms of academic science. These are not necessarily norms shared in industry research. Nonetheless, especially when it comes to applied science, many funders wish to see collaboration between industry and academia. This is nothing that is bad per se, can be desirable, but it is also related to normative challenges because actors are governed by different sets of ideals. Another challenge, this might be more pertinent in studying than in actually conducting research. Challenges related to lack of congruence between academic values and societal values. And academic values can also be values of studying properly, where honesty, for example, would be very important. It's of course also valuable in research, or not cheating, but in societies where cheating is a norm, where this is not perceived as being problematic by actors, well, this can be an empirical problem. That's not so much a normative problem. It would still be clearly wrong, but how to address this, certainly a difficult question, especially for those who also teach, which many people in academia do. Challenges can be related to unclear norms, especially in new areas of research. Norms might not yet be clear. I just talked about research ethics of biomedical research. Research ethics in biomedical research are fairly well specified. This is much less the case in many other disciplines. So if these norms do not yet exist, researchers have to kind of operationalize overarching values in their area of research themselves. As a result, their understanding of a norm is not necessarily communally shared, which leads to perspectives becoming increasingly privatized. It's not something researchers can do much about. It's a problem they face, but this is where guidance is lacking, academic values are unclear, or norms are unclear. This is precisely the problem. We only have values, but not norms. Guidance is absent. Translating values into norms, therefore, is very often a problem because many documents, many codes are much more specific on what values are and less specific on what this implies in practice. Last but not least, adjudicating between different competing values and norms can be difficult, can lead to moral conflicts that are in principle solvable, but also to dilemmas where we cannot do justice to both values at the same time. This, of course, is a burden for people involved in the research system. Ideally, researchers, when being confronted with these norms, should be supported by strong research systems, by strong research institutions, so that Not all of the burden falls on them. These should be the ideal depiction of levels of responsibility. In reality, however, this pyramid is often almost inverted and an undue burden falls on researchers, perhaps especially on junior researchers, who then have to navigate an ethically complex field with often very limited support infrastructures. And we're very interested in listening what the fellow upcoming speakers will have to say on this. And if in such an environment, values change or norms change, this problem becomes even bigger unless these normative changes are accompanied by changes in research governance, that is, better research infrastructures. I hope this is a valuable starting point for the remainder of today's session. Looking forward to what's coming next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. This is a very good introduction indeed. Thank you for emphasizing values and norms and the issue of translating of values into norms, because it is quite relevant for doctoral candidates and for skills training in this regard. So I hope we will elaborate more on that today. So now we will come to the speakers' presentations from our selected 4 countries. And then after the presentations, I will ask Tom to reflect on the national practices, on different countries' experiences, on how do they treat this topic in their academic communities in 4 countries, and then we will come to the discussion. Okay, so now we will be having the speakers section, and the succession of the speakers will be the same as we announced on the website. So as the first, I would like to invite Poland's representative of Polish National Association of Doctoral Candidates, KRD, Monika Raczyńska. She is the current career development working group co-coordinator. She is a doctoral candidate in management and quality studies at the University WSB in Dąbrowa Górnicza. In Poland, Monika comes from Katowice. This is very important because Katowice will be the next European capital of science next year and will host ESOF forum in 2024, in which Eurodoc usually participates quite actively. Monika is very active in KRD, in numerous committees, and specifically acts quite actively in Poland in terms of the international collaboration and engaged in Eurodoc. So Monika, please share with us the Polish perspective of academic values. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for a very nice introduction. I will share my presentation. And thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility to be with you today. Thank you all organizers for a very interesting topic and for preparing that event. I would like to say something about academic values from the perspective of doctoral candidates in Poland and how the National Association of Doctoral Candidates in Poland try to implement those values. I will start from I will try to start from the component of the European Innovation Scoreboard. And I need to say that it was prepared by Maastricht University and European Commission. So it's very important also because that the first indicator of that indicator, there is a new PhD graduates per 1,000 inhabitants, age 25 to 34. And when we look at this indicator, comparing 2017 and 2010, we see that it's very low. And it's one of the justification for such a discussion, and I hope it could be held by other stakeholders. Now, we were told to look at academic values from the perspective of the report from Finland, which was prepared during the Finland presidency of the Council of the European Union. There are defined some academic values, academic freedom and integrity, institutional autonomy, participation of students and staff in higher education governance, and public responsibility for and of higher education. And there was an explanation that academic freedom also need financing, recruitment and retention, secure employment condition. It need participate meaningfully in decision-making process, freedom to learn, to teach, to research, but also standards of the respective discipline, possibility to share ideas, think, and share ideas inside and outside academia, and equitable access to higher education. I would add that we also need serious treatment, even that we are at the beginning of the career. We try to be researchers and develop in sustainable way to have families and appropriate skills. And 2023 is the year of skills. Those goals are connected with the Swedish presidency of the Council of the European Union, which take place now. How we try to implement academic values. We have plenipotentiaries responsible for equalities. It was the recommendation from the Agenda for an Equal Treatment of the Polish National Association of Doctoral Candidates. We have a PhD candidate ombudsman in KRD, and he has its own team. A PhD candidate could ask him about how to understand law and some statements even at universities. We have a doctoral support team. We could contact PhD candidates would contact with RD. We try to start from us by promoting integrity, organizing meeting on equal conditions. For example, projects like local ambassador for PhD candidates' rights, for also foreign doctoral candidates. The School of Young Scientists of Local Government, which was financed by the Polish Ministry. Very important Polish-Ukrainian summer camp for young scientists in 2022. Congress of KRD delegates and extraordinary board. They are very important because we can show our rules, how KRD is functioning, and we could have new participants, members. A very important work and science forum, the second edition. We try to promote also the possibility to have a job inside and outside academia, new skills. We try to promote increasing of scholarship, and it was there was a success in 2023. There are some trainings for doctoral candidates, statement in law. Members of KRD need to be apolitical, and we have such a statement in our statute and main act. Also, we have representative in main council of science and higher education. KRD is taking part by evaluating of doctoral schools by delegating a representative. We consult some legal acts. In Hungary, there is a legal affairs committee. We try to be active in Eurodoc. We remember Agnieszka and Beata Zwierzyńska, a previous president of the Eurodoc. Try to be active in the committee NGOs as advocates for gender equality of women's rights as a part of the Council of Europe. There are projects financed by a ministry. Competition for the most productoral entity running a doctoral school or doctoral studies in Poland, and the most productoral the Polish Academy of Science Institute and the association, the best association at those entities. There is a conference connected model of functioning of doctoral schools when we try to promote best values. And winners to promote scientific activity of young scientists or the National Science Center competition. We have also some rules additional rules in our statute. We try to take into account as members some principles that were mentioned and take care about good of doctoral community. We can bring action in favor of some person in case of protection of equality and non-discrimination, and cooperate politically with public authorities. That it's not all, but some examples. We have also some problems. It's my point of view. There is a problem of financing of doctoral studies versus doctoral schools. After reform, doctoral candidates could have financing, but it's something different in doctoral studies. As we saw, PhD candidates do not finish with PhD degree doctoral studies. And it's not popular to have some PhDs like collections of published and thematically connected articles. Even that it's very interesting for universities because they take them into account in evaluations. Mobility between sectors is better, but it's also some. There are some problems. There are other needs, but it's there was a report, but it's for broader discussion. And to sum up, I could say that we could have. We try to have development. Try to develop to have better skills, competences, and knowledge, and to have families and try to develop like researchers inside and outside academia. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Monika, for sharing the Polish perspective, and indeed, thank you for mentioning the participation in higher education governance and science governance in the policymaking process, in which KRD, as we know, is very active. This is indeed very important value, and it should be nurtured and supported. Thank you very much for that. So now, we come to Ukraine, to the Ukrainian perspective. This is very unique indeed nowadays. So we are having the representative from the Council of Young Scientists under the Ministry of Education and Science, but more Artem Artyukhov is more a national expert in academic integrity in terms of values. Artem Artyukhov comes from Sumy State University, from the Department of Marketing. He's an associate professor, but he's very famous in Ukraine because of his active activities and membership in the National Agency for Higher Education Quality Assurance of Ukraine, where he is personally responsible for academic integrity. And during his period of office, he was one of the co-authors of the legal regulations in terms of the academic integrity in Ukraine, which has been also introduced as a part of national legislation for Ukraine. Artem is an international educational engineer. He's a doctor of engineering and very active in diverse ethical and integrity communities in Europe. So Artem, the floor is yours.
Irina, many thanks for my presentation. It's an honor for me to come here, and it's an honor for me to take part in this webinar. First of all, before my speech, before my presentation, what I want to say a couple of words about the previous presentation, Tom presentation, because some ideas, some brilliant ideas from the Tom speech are on the base of my presentation and are related to my presentation. Let me share my screen first of all, and I would like to say a couple of words about the current situation with academic integrity, with values in Ukraine. In my speech, I'll refer to the one of common fundamental value. This is academic integrity in educational and research practices of higher education institutions. My presentation, my speech will be not unusual. It's not about some achievements of Ukrainian science or education system. It's not about statistics, about success in struggle for values in science and education. My speech, on the other hand, my speech is not optimistic. Because we have a not good situation in Ukraine with some issues of research integrity. My speech is rather a summary of challenges which are faced by Ukrainian scientists. And I have some question before my presentation. It's not a question to the audience, it's a question to every scientist in Ukraine as well as scientists in other countries. What external and internal factors influence scientists to commit violations? Who is the assistant of this process? Is it possible to simplify the research process with the violations? Yes, the answers to these questions are clear, but violations don't disappear. And my speech is a set of examples why Ukrainian scientists continue to violate. Okay, what is the state of art in the promotion of integrity, research and academic integrity? On the scales, we have the ideal and ideal situation and reality. On the left side, you can see the rules and regulations. By the way, Tom said about some norms of values, and we need to put down some norms in our regulation document on the national level, on the level of some organization, on the local university level. You can see a list of international organizations which promote academic integrity, values, and education in science. You can see some document. Tom said about the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. We have the Bucharest Declaration on Ethical Values task force for future monitoring values, and we have the national regulatory framework. Irina said that I was one of the co-author for some regulation of the National Agency for Quality Assurance in Ukraine. We have the Ukrainian Scientist Code of Ethics, and on the final, we have the University Regulation base and the University Code of Conduct, Code of Honor, and or code with some other title, but it's really Code of Conduct. And the reality on the other scale, right part of this picture, we have the cause-effect relationships. What is the process? We have a widespread of fake science phenomenon. We have the predatory conferences and journals. We have host writing firms, and it's not good for all areas, especially for young scientists, for early career researchers. And as a result, these are the two examples of the fake theory of non-force interaction by Yuri Tesla and the lepton gut by Katerina Kirilenko. And you can see that ideal state of art is rather different from reality. And in this case, as I said before, my speech is a set of examples of reality. First of all, process. Because the main thing is fake science. And during some activity in the frame of other projects and in collaboration with some colleagues, I tried to create some picture and some description of face of fake science. You can see this face of fake science, and I think this face of fake science is the same for different countries, for the Central and Eastern Europe. We have the information where to find it, general omens, special omens, and what is the operation tactics and strategy of fake science on the different levels, short term and long term. What are the traits? Really, it's not the traits of the fake science, but for some people, it's straight. Tom said that we have some hierarchy of the research environment. It's scientist, researcher, research institution, and research system. And fake of fake science is dedicated to the researcher and research system. And in this case, it's in the base of our Ukrainian, but not only in Ukrainian, as I think, violation of research integrity. Okay, and now some examples of the result of fake science. We try to simplify our scientific life, but it's not good in the case if we use some violation of academic integrity for the simplification. Okay, predatory conference. We have the, for example, it's some features of predatory conference. You pay only, for example, 10 euros, and you as a participant in the conference, for example, in Canada, in France, so on, so on. And during the week, you are able to participate in 5 conferences all over the world. It's a good for some scientists, but really it's a stupid situation, and it's a not good practice for scientists who knows this practice. And after this practice will be widespread, it's not good really. Okay, some features of predatory conference bingo: remote internet conference, scientific and practically of this conference, foreign international conference, but languages of publication are Ukrainian and Russian. 7 days before the publication of articles, we know that a review process will be between 4 and 6 weeks, and the first result of this review will be only after this time, and we will have 5, 7, maybe 10 rounds of the review, maybe 1 or 2, but usually we have a number of review rounds. But if you want to submit our abstract near the deadline, then we are welcome. The next one, fake bibliography information, ISBN and publisher, very wide scope of the conference. For example, in Ukraine, we have the 21 different areas of science, and we know that some conferences are very specific, only one area and or one sub area, but we have the experience to participate in the conference with all 29 areas of study. I think it's not good for the concrete area of study and field of expertise. Acceptance of abstract to the last time, even on the conference day. Receipt for payment is expected immediately. We know that only after the acceptance we need to pay APC or some other fee. Okay, payment accounts related to an individual in state of organization. This is the first example of the results of fake science. It's a very easy way to publish the results of our research, but it's not a good way. Okay, and spam warning, all messages, you can find all messages in your spam folder. Okay, example. One example, this is the conference, Science Development and Factors Its Influence. There is no specific conference. It held in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and you can see that it's 138 issue of the scientific collection, venue Amsterdam, Netherlands, but participant countries is post-Soviet countries. And in this case, you feel that it's not good. It's a bad way. Yeah, we have the excellent title, we have the good venue in Europe, but as a result, we have a very bad experience. And the working languages of this conference is, of course, Ukrainian, Russian, Georgian, Moldovan, and so on. It's not good, and it's a result of our relation with fake science. The next one, this is my own experiment, as I said in my during my previous slides. I have some own point of view about fake science, and this is my experiment in publication in some predatory journals. As Tom said before, values are about motivation. We need to obtain realize some KPI of our contract during our scientific or educational life, 1, 2, or 5 years of contract, for example. If we need to publish, but we have no good material for publication in good journals, highly reputed journals. But we had the possibility, we had the opportunity to publish in some international journals like this. This is one journal about polymer science. And you can see that I try to submit article, Problems of Observing Academic Integrity, the influence of the polymer science current state. It's it's a very funny title of this article, but this article consists of a more funny part. You see that I marked that this material was submitted for consideration as a part of an experiment to identify commercially oriented organization. The submitted material calls for the fight against dishonesty by refusing to publish in dubious journals, so on, so on. I put these documents, I put this text directly to the article. And my article was published. Yeah, I need to pay 700 euros, as I remember, but of course, I have no these plans. But you can see the result of my experiment. And if I publish this funny article in some international journal, then some other scientists have the possibility to publish the same funny articles, and they obtain some points in their contract and their KPI obtaining. Yeah, and the last one for my speech, we have the procedure think, check, submit, and it's related to all Ukrainian activity in the field of science, different kind of areas, expertise areas, so on, so on. And Peter Scotese said that integrity is not a 90% thing, not a 95% thing. Either you have it or you don't. And on the my final couple of words, in this changeable word, changeable in the science sense, we have opportunity to simplify our scientific life, but the results of this simplification will be very bad. It's a loss of our authority, it's a blacklist of our publication, so on, so on. Once again, I would like to say thanks for the invitation and for the opportunity to show our Ukrainian experience. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Artem. I like your examples and experiments. They remind me the one about Dr. Fraud, also conducted by our Polish colleagues here about the fake editor who was accepted by several journals. So this person has never existed. Of course, she was invented. So thank you again, and good luck. But still, as we are on Ukraine for a couple of seconds. I would like also to recall what you had in the. Hello. Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, now yes, yeah.
Yeah, yes. I would like to recall to the title of the project that you have presented. It was on the bottom, from academic integrity to EU values. And I would like to stop a little bit on those EU values because this is extremely important if we are talking today about Ukraine and about brutal and unjust full-scale Russian war of aggression. And let me remind you that the Russian universities and research institutions were excluded from the European higher education area from Bologna process, and the Russian universities lost their membership, were excluded. Their membership was suspended by the European University Association and Council for Doctoral Education with the because their activities and how they support the war, it does not refer to the European values, to the values of the rule of law, to the values of European democracy. So this is high-level values of the society, of the democratic societies, of our commonly shared values in Europe. So that was the primary motivation why the Russian institutions were suspended. And that was the right decision because they cannot be the part. They cannot belong to the European family of universities, the European academic community, until they support this brutal and unjust invasion. So that was the remark I would like to make. So now let's go to the other country. We are going to Slovenia, to the representative of the Slovenian National Association of Doctoral Candidates, named Mlada Akademija, Young Academy of Slovenia in English. And I would like to invite Dr. Maja Petek. She is the current vice president of the Young Academy of Slovenia and the postdoctoral researcher at the Faculty of Medicine in the University of Maribor. She has quite extensive international background. She completed undergraduate and graduate studies at the University of Cambridge, and now she is actively participating in the Young Academy of Slovenia in terms of research policies and sustainable research careers. Thank you, Maja, for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll try to be brief. So, in speaking of academic values and the perspective in Slovenia, the first thing to mention is that in the Slovenian academic landscape, there are three types of key institutions, and those are the universities. There are 3 publicly funded universities and several private ones. There are several important and internationally recognized research institutes, particularly the Institute of Jožef Stefan and the National Institute of Chemistry, as well as the humanities-focused research institute, ZRC SAZU. And then the third pillar are the funders, in particular the Slovenian Research Agency and the Ministry of Education, Science and Sport. So they set both a fair amount of funding and the legal and institutional framework for the other actors. Now, in discussing the academic values, I thought to have a look at the declared institutional values. So those reflect the institutional values and their mission statements, but also consider their implementation through the internal policy documents, procedures, and resources. The reason I'm talking about institutional values in that in Slovenia, there isn't really a framework for sort of values as a whole or a forum for the academic community as a whole, but instead much of the value part of the framework is set by the individual institutions. This was particularly strengthened in the recent year or two, since the entire academic landscape is currently undergoing a shift towards a higher degree of institutional autonomy, where a substantial part of research funding has shifted towards the research organizations themselves. So the universities and institutes with less control through the central actors. So as an example, I'd like to show 2 particular statements of values from the University of Ljubljana and the University of Maribor. And there are some expected keywords there. So for example, the University of Ljubljana states to value and build its research, education, professional and public activities based on academic excellence, academic freedom, autonomy, humanism, human rights, and an ethical attitude towards the world. So these come from publicly available documents. And if we look at the University of Maribor, the story that we see is fairly similar. So for example, the University of Maribor publishes a strategy for the current decade, and in it tries to summarize both the mission and the vision of the university as an institution, in which values such as honesty, creativity, freedom of spirit, cooperation, and knowledge transfer are emphasized. So on the declarative level, it seems that the institutions are at least aware and intend to follow the European academic values. However, there does seem to be a gap between this ideal aspirational level and the practice. For example, one of the issues with scientific integrity have been relatively common accusations of plagiarism. Here's an example of a university rector being accused of plagiarizing some parts of a textbook through translation from an English language work without attribution. Now, this is a matter that was analyzed by the University Senate, so the highest governing organ of a university, and they did not find irregularities. However, it is telling both that this happened and that no public statements, hearings or discussions, or even summaries of the kind of how such a conclusion was reached. So that tends to leave a bitter taste. And I'm not trying to say that this particular example was in any way special. Trying to find examples of plagiarism is something that is a favorite activity of Slovenian media, particularly for publicly visible figures. And I think it's important that we focus not so much on particular people who have had been accused or who had affairs regarding plagiarism, but also think about this in terms of institutional activities, and keep in mind that particularly public figures such as government secretaries or ministers often spend some time at the university, and that their accusation of plagiarism might come from several decades beforehand, and institutional frameworks and practices, of course, shift in this time. So here are a few more examples of cases or policy areas where there are rule books and guidelines that have been issued, but there is a gap between the policy statements and the practical implementation. For example, in recent years, all European research institutions that wish to compete for ROSiE grant funding have been required to create a gender equality statement and consider how gender equality in the institutions could be achieved. However, there has been little evidence that that has gone beyond words on paper. Similarly, there is a current initiative for reforming research assessment, which COARA, which intends to move away from quantitative metrics such as journal impact factors to assess the outputs of particular researchers. And several key institutions, so both universities, research institutes, and the Central Research Agency have joined this coalition. However, by far the largest majority of hiring, promotion, and grant award criteria in Slovenia are predominantly quantitative and rely on the number of publications with high impact factors. This includes the rulebooks that were written relatively recently, while the process for COARA and joining such has been in place. So here it very much remains to be seen whether the movement towards assessing particularly individual work and not just counting points in a table is actually going to happen. Similarly, of course, there are rulebooks for assessing plagiarism, and currently all thesis works have to be checked for plagiarism through an automatic checker. But other institutional factors that might encourage poor quality scientific work, that might encourage such things. For example, just having like numeric requirements for hiring and promotion, that a particular person has to have this many papers published in journals with such impact factors, and if you don't meet those numbers, you can't be hired to a position. So those rules still exist, and that of course creates an incentive for poor authorship practice, gift authorships, not giving credit where credit is due, etc. And this has little to do with particular people. This is an institutional issue. Similarly, there are strategies for internalization, and yet advertising for new positions is usually done briefly and locally, so it is very difficult for someone who's not already within the academic system to apply to it. So here are just a few perspectives where values can have academic and institutional values can have a real impact on how science and research is done, and that have come up in the academic community in Slovenia. So they are, I would say that in conclusion, in Slovenia, we are relatively in step in terms of European institutional values, at least on the declarative level. And we're currently transitioning towards increasing institutional autonomy, thanks to the recent changes in the law governing research publicly funded research activity. But of course, there are challenges remaining, particularly inertia of the existing system that has been running for decades, of course. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maya. This is very interesting perspective comparison, the declaration and the implementation. I hope Tom will refer to that after the last presentation. Thank you again. Okay, so now we are having the floor for Hungary, for the Hungarian Association of Doctoral Candidates named DOS. So I would like to invite Husam Rajab. He is a PhD candidate in computer engineering at Budapest University of Technology and Economics. Husam's research focus is Internet of Things, 5G, digitalizing health, etc. Very interesting and modern topics. He is the board member in the EIT Health Innovators Community and project manager with JAL organization. So Husam, please share with us the Hungarian experience. We don't hear you. We see the slides, but I don't hear you. Hello? Husam?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Oriana, for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. And yeah, I'm going to just sum up in a quick because we don't have enough time for the discussion. So I will talk about the academic integrity. So today, what does mean academic integrity here in Hungary, especially in the Hungarian University? And I will just share about what is the honor conduct or code of conduct, and why it's important to students, and why we should students care about the academic integrity, and then what are the differences type of academic dishonesty. First of all of us like here, what is integrity and what do you think academic integrity means? Integrity is adheres to moral, ethical principle, soundness of moral characteristic, honesty. For example, we will talk about honesty and what is called. So honesty, it's a coursework, and knowing that in definition can be explored as academic integrity refers to honesty, morality, and ethicality, especially in related school activities and situation. More in details, if we want to talk about the values, include honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, and respect, and the courage to uphold these values. More in details, if I want to talk about academic integrity, it refers to the principle of the students are expected to follow their education at the college. These policies provide the guideline to help students and faculty make responsible moral and ethical decisions related all aspects to their association with their university. For sure, every university has policy outlining their principle, and most they have very clearly defined official policy. However, the details do vary from school to school, although not every school use the same formal name for their policy. If that was this key word in it, and it's properly the same type policy, honor, conduct, or integrity. The specific regulation, it tend to differ, but there are many commonalities amongst the school. In a few minutes, like we will talk about the consequences of violating the policy, also differ from school to school, but there are many commonalities here as well. So now what we mean about code of conduct, it's a set of rule and expectation governing student and faculty, also that defines the honorable and acceptable behavior and dishonorable and acceptable behavior from the students as well, and community's importance of academic integrity to a school community, and maybe include non-academic expectation in addition to academic related rules. But why should the students care about the academic integrity? And that is very crucial here. So first of all, that will eliminate unfair advantage between students, foundation of your university degree, build moral character, and perhaps a student for a future life and work demands, especially in the industry. But what are the different types of academic dishonesty? First of all, the students have obligation to act with integrity under student discipline. This below describe the category academic dishonesty, and the students can be charged with including academic scientific fraud, cheating, breaking the exams rule, resubmitting previous course as a new work, examination prevention, inoperation, collaboration, and plagiarism. I don't want to talk more in details because I think other colleague mentioned about many of these, but yeah, that is a sum up of the integrity here in Hungary. But yeah, we can go for more further discussion and a question from you guys. Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Husam. That's a very brief overview for Hungarian perspective. Dear Tom, I would like to ask you for a brief reflection on the country's perspectives for the academic values, integrity, and everything which is related here. Tom?
Yes, thank you for the question, and thank you very much for the very interesting presentations, which I think very much showed that academic values is a very, very broad field, and that perspectives on academic values differ significantly. You can look at this thing from very different angles, and that is certainly what the speakers did. And I think already the first challenge when you ask, be it researchers or students, to adhere to academic values, unless you specify more clearly what is meant here, it's a very difficult thing to do, because it's pretty difficult to understand what they are asked to do unless they know the field already very well. What I also think became obvious is that most challenges that have been identified, and I think all speakers mentioned many challenges, are not primarily on the side of whether or not the values are important or whether they are contested or not, but that many challenges are related to acting in accordance with and implementing things. As I've understood it, there is a, let's say, positive trajectory in the Slovenia, where there is still institutional inertia that needs to be overcome, which I think also points to the fact that change is difficult, takes time. You know, you need coalitions of multiple actors to ultimately trigger change. And this is presumably a long-term process, whereas situations in other countries, I think particular in Ukraine, seems to be very dire. And where one problem, and I think that also points to an overarching problem, is that malicious actors exploit the reputation that is ascribed to academic values, namely organizations that violate academic values while calling themselves academic, therefore abusing the reputation of science to further their own interests. And in that sense, this of course undermines values, because values are used to justify a practice which is precisely violating the values. And this is, I guess, very difficult to understand, especially for lay people, but as Artem said, also for researchers to participate in conferences that castigate as academic, but that are not academic, that are precisely the opposite of realizing academic values. In that sense, I think it became very clear that challenges are multifaceted, the challenges are enormous. And also, perhaps related to the last point I tried to make in my introductory remarks, very often the burden of acting in line with values falls upon researchers, especially in the countries that were represented in this panel. It seems that institutional support structures, governance structures on the country level fall way short supporting acting with integrity, acting based on academic values, acting based on norms derived from these values. The degree or the magnitude of the challenges differs with what I think there is more positive picture in, for example, Slovenia, without things really being good yet. There's still, I guess, quite a long way to go, but at least the trajectory has started, whereas this is a lot more challenging in other respects, and just points to the need to do more on all levels, on the level of researchers, but very much, perhaps even more so, on the level of research institutions and research policymakers. Only coalitions of incorporating multiple actors can presumably trigger the change processes that are needed to improve the research system and make academic values more than a promise, but also a reality. Thanks. This would be my initial reflections.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have the question regarding what you've just said, but maybe you will develop more on that. And maybe you would be the right person to answer that question. Is there someone that can claim to be some sort of authority at EU level about academic values?
Well, it's difficult to answer in a very precise way. But of course, I think one of the leading actors or institutions working on research ethics and research integrity would be the ethics and integrity sector of the European Commission, which is part of the Directorate General for Research and Innovation with Dorian Karatsas and his team. They are clearly among the engines of furthering research ethics and research integrity in at least EU-funded projects, which all again points to the problem. Many researchers, especially in the scientific periphery, have almost no access to EU funding. So the effects EU ethics and integrity initiatives have are often somewhat limited if researchers don't have access to this funding. But I would say guidelines that are implemented on the EU level are at least often kind of a model, as well as the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, which has been endorsed by the European Commission and been developed by all European academies, OLEA, which is a very large umbrella organization, including academies of sciences from all over Europe. So these would be the kind of documents or bodies where I would take the first look, and I would say that they do have a significant degree of epistemic authority on a more global plane. To some extent, also the World Conferences on Research Integrity that have issued several statements on various facets of research integrity that define, I think, very clear and important pathways to change the current situation for the better.
Yeah, thank you very much for the answer. I encourage audience to ask the questions on the YouTube, as I'm informed. So we have the one form of reflecting from the other side of the screen. This is a YouTube channel. And we have several questions, but we have actually time for one. But we will share the Padlets now. I know that it is possible to send the link and to show the QR codes also for our audience also after the webinar. They will reflect on that and answer our questions, which we will summarize and publish on the Eurodoc website later. So could we share the link to the Padlet or QR code? Anastasia?
Actually, I have only link. I don't have QR code.
Okay, then we will place the link to the Eurodoc YouTube channel. But actually, the first question and the one for now for today to all the speakers. you presented quite a diverse perspective for academic values, and starting from like democracy and European values, finishing engagement into governance, and with the core for ethics and research integrity. So now the question related to the training doctoral candidates and career researchers. So how can we actually train doctoral candidates within doctoral programs or beyond them in the challenges that regards academic values in this changing environment, in these challenges for academic, for research careers, how we train doctoral candidates to ensure this culture, research culture, which Eurodoc advocates for. So this is the question to our speakers, and I would like Husam maybe to reflect as the first one.
Yeah, can you hear me, right? Yeah, so I think in that perspective, we can provide the PhD candidate and young researcher a training on a responsible conduct of research and ethical principle in research. This can include, for example, workshops, seminar, and courses that cover topics such as data management, research integrity, authorship, and conflict of interest. Additionally, that also providing opportunities for mentorship and guidance for experienced researchers that can help them to foster a culture of academic integrity and responsible conduct within the research community. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Maya, how to organize training, how to train in academic values?
Yes, I'd sort of add on to the first point, which is about basically organizing workshops and training about best practices for PhD candidates, which I think a lot of universities are actually already doing. This is kind of been a trend towards like including the values, the training in skills and values for young researchers. I would add two things. One is also having this kind of training be mandatory for PhD supervisors. Because if the young candidate learns what practices are, but their supervisor, their boss tells them they have to do it the way it's always been, or the way that it's easier or cheaper, they don't have the power in the hierarchy quite often to go against that. So actually having this training go both ways, I think will go a long way towards actually making it happen. And thirdly, I would say through inviting early career researchers to the table when there are discussions about institutional policy and value statements and practices about how to actually handle such issues. Because including this would achieve two things. One, give a broader perspective, a broader set of perspectives when the policies are set, which is hardly a bad thing. And also train those who are interested in actually participating in the processes and make the process more open and democratic, which I think are also sort of in line with modern European values. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maya. Artem, your perspective on the training.
Yeah, we have the experience, we have the special course on research integrity for our PhD candidates, and we try to share this experience all over our Ukrainian regions. For example, in the frame of one project, we have the online course, multidimensional immersive environment for the achievement of academic and research integrity, and we have more than 2,000 students, PhD candidates, so on and so on. And what are the part of these trainings? First of all is practice, second practice, third practice. We need to promote the values of academic integrity. It may be some examples, some cases, and after this, it will be workshops, special workshop, working groups, cases, role play, games, and we need to involve all PhD candidates, all young researchers in this process, where when they are inside this process, they recognize the violations of academic integrity, different kind of values, and they will try to solve the problem of violation of academic integrity. It's the most powerful engine to promote academic integrity and to obtain the honest environment. We told about whistleblowers, and every PhD candidate, every young researcher will be a change maker, whistleblower. And in this case, I think all workshops, all trainings for PhD candidates and young researchers will be in the form of practice. The most powerful thing is to feel all these problems and feel to phenomenon of academic integrity and values on its own experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Artem. Monika, what is the KRD perspective on training?
At the beginning, I would like to thank you very much for the very important and difficult question. I'll try to say something from the point of view of a doctoral candidate in Poland, according to the document I mentioned at the beginning from Helsinki. I also hope that this definition would be discussed by other stakeholders. For example, in Poland, we have other associations which represent, for example, students, Parliament of Students of Republic of Poland, or associations which represent postdocs, for example, Council of Young Scientists. Of course, we could have different point of view, but discussion is very important, and we can exchange our point of view during this meeting. It is important to stress that in the European qualification framework and national qualification framework in different countries, we have knowledge, skills, and competences as three pillars. So it's very important how we can train. We could start from ourselves, different stakeholders. For example, cooperate, Eurodoc, National Association, Doctoral Candidates, associations of and at universities, government, and of course, doctoral candidates. For example, we had important projects like in the presentation, local ambassador of PhD candidates, and the School of Young Scientists of local government, and very important Polish-Ukrainian summer camp. In the first and the second project, which were financed by Ministry of Science and Education, KRD tried to train PhD candidates within a few days. Next, those PhD candidates train other PhD candidates at university. For example, law or the rights, obligation, soft and hard skills, values. And so PhD candidates can improve their skills and knowledge and integrate, have friends. From my point of view, social aspects of trainings are very important because we are social creatures and we need contact of other people. Different organizations like Eurodoc, universities would help in that. There are also conferences organized by KRD, for example, the model of functioning of doctoral schools, when we could train and promote academic values. There are also, of course, some shorter trainings and workshops.
Thank you very much, Monika, for this important aspect. Tom, could you also maybe share good practices for training doctoral candidates in academic values briefly?
Yes, of course. Well, I think there are several important issues that come into play here, and many of which have already been mentioned. One is to integrate training in educational trajectories, not only as a one-off thing, but on a more permanent basis. And not only in doctoral programs, training for supervisors was mentioned here as well. So I would argue that in many regards, the issue of training is not only one for doctoral education, but for the career trajectory of researchers, because integrity issues pop up along the whole career pathway. And supervisors and others certainly can learn a lot as well. As regards training content, what I think is important is that training not only focuses on guidelines as such, so what is the content of a guideline, what is the content of some kind of document, but also to really help solve challenges or address challenges, focus on conduct in imperfect research environments. If we tell researchers only what they should do in ideal situations, we provide relatively little action guidance, because often research environments are very challenging and the best possible course of action is not available in reality. Monika just stressed that researchers are, of course, human beings. Human beings are social beings, so we're all embedded in a social environment. And if researchers risk their own career by acting with integrity, well, then we are demanding a lot and perhaps too much. So always reflect on circumstances, reflect on the broader challenges researchers are embedded in, and provide them with tools that help them navigate an imperfect landscape competently, especially if you train junior researchers. Junior researchers are not those who by themselves can easily change research environments. That's the last point I wanted to make here is training in itself is always good, of course, and it's definitely very important. Yet to create a culture of academic values, research ethics, research integrity, this needs to be accompanied by changes in research governance on the institutional as well as on the national level. Trainings can perhaps help to make people change agents and to demand more from their institutions and to trigger changes. But ideally, trainings should be a component of a broader strategy that improves research governance systems on a more macro level. And I would recommend people take a look at some trainings we have recently developed. I have made very positive experiences with both the virtue trainings arena that you've already mentioned in the beginning, which I think very much tried to give guidance on how to navigate complex research environments. I think other projects have done similar things, be it Path to Integrity. I think the European Network for Academic Integrity also does a lot of things. So there are at least fruitful starting point that, of course, will require continuous updating during the next couple of years.
Thank you very much, Tom. This is brilliant summarizing of what we have discussed. But for the very end, I would like to ask a very short question, which comes from YouTube, and ask you to give a very short and brief answer, like yes or no, because it's a yes or no question. Is the sustainability of researchers' careers value enough as and academic value? Is it an academic value at all? Tom, is sustainability of careers, of research careers, can it be considered an academic value?
Well, if I have to say yes or no, I'll say yes here.
Okay. The other guys, Monika? Is
Yes.
sustainability, yeah? Okay. Artem?
I think if we are talking about process, no. And if we are talking about result, yes, of course.
That's cool. Husam?
Yeah, definitely I can say yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we broadened the list of academic values to the idea of sustainability of researchers' careers. This is definitely a value for the person, but also for the system. We have still shared the Padlet with questions. As I mentioned, it will be available for a certain period of time. And so we are encouraging our participants, listeners, to answer the questions. We would like to gather some answers, and we will share and reflect on them on the Eurodoc website. So we are about to finish. Maybe I will give just 30 seconds to each of our speakers to say some final words, and we will stop on that. Okay, Husam, maybe you will start.
I can start. Yeah, thank you for that invitation. I mean, just want to think and summarize a diversity in research. It's also important and bring different perspective and ideas, which can lead to more innovation and rigorous research outcome. And also that helps also in identifying and addressing the issues and the bias and the inequality. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Monika. 30 seconds.
Thank you for the voice. For that, I think and I hope that the discussion could be held in the future by other stakeholders that would support us in our ideas and express their point of view.
Thank you, Artem.
Academic integrity and values is a difficult issue for the research life, but it's a big challenge for us. And I would like to many thanks for today's brilliant speech and today's conversation, because it's the right way to improve our skills, and we need to share this experience for our young researchers. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Maya. Maya, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'd just like to thank Tom for the initial presentation, which gives a very good framework for thinking about academic values and academic integrity. I think it's very helpful to have such meetings, because for those of us, especially in the natural sciences, we don't necessarily have the training in the social science and how to approach such discussions, but they do affect us to a very large degree. So also thanks to Eurodoc for organizing the webinar.
Thank you very much. And Tom, the last 30 seconds for you.
Also, thank you very much for organizing this very interesting session. I think having these conversations is very important, and I would close with something like I don't know if rallying cry is the correct phrasing for that, but to those listening to this, those interested in this topic, there are enormous challenges related to realizing academic values. Co-creation of guidelines and trainings, etc., has been mentioned as being important. So my plea is get involved, build networks, reach out to other actors, build coalitions to trigger change processes. This will be a long way, but starting this pathway is necessary. Make your voices heard.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much to all the speakers, also to the audience, to the organizers, Anastasia Simachova, Nicola Dengo from Eurodoc. Thank you to Pil. Thank you very much for all your efforts to organize these fantastic events. Thank you, speakers, for very interesting presentations. My name is Irina Dekterova. I'm advisory board member of Eurodoc, and join in the future our Eurodoc events, not only yearly conference, but also some webinars, activities, and we will work hard by advocating academic values for early career researchers in Eurodoc, in Europe, and supporting our members when doing so in their own countries. So thank you very much. Have a good evening, and glory to Ukraine. Goodbye.
Bye. Glory to Ukraine.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.